Call came at 2:47 inches the morning. I know the exact time because I'd been awake anyway, sitting in my garage with the hood of a 1968 Mustang propped open, trying to figure out why the carburetor was running rich. I've been restoring old cars for 30 years. It's what I do when I can't sleep, which lately had been every night. My phone buzzed on the workbench. My younger daughter's name lit up the screen. Dad. Her voice was low, controlled in the way it gets when she's trying not to panic. She's a family law attorney in Boston. She doesn't panic easily. Don't say anything yet. Just listen. I set down my wrench. Your accountant called me this evening. Your accountant, Dad, not yours. The one Marcus hired for you 3 years ago. His name is Gerald Fitch, and he's been filing your taxes, managing your accounts, the whole thing. He called me because he's scared. He said Marcus told him to wire $340,000 from your retirement account into a new LLC by Friday. He said Marcus told him you authorized it. Dad, she paused. Did you authorize anything like that? I hadn't. I hadn't even known I had a new accountant. My name is Robert Calloway. I'm 64 years old. I spent 31 years as a high school history teacher in Dayton, Ohio. And when I retired, I thought the hardest part of my life was behind me. My wife, Carol, passed from ovarian cancer 6 years ago. That was the hardest part. Everything after that was supposed to be manageable. My son Marcus is 38. He's always been charming, the kind of man who walks into a room and immediately makes everyone feel like they've been waiting for him. After Carol died, he moved back from Chicago with his wife Renee, said he wanted to be closer, said he was worried about me rattling around alone in a 4-bedroom house. I thought it was kindness. I thought I'd raised him right. My daughter Laura is 34. She lives in Boston, works 70-hour weeks, sends me a card on every birthday, and calls every Sunday at noon without fail. She never asked me for anything except to take care of myself. When Marcus suggested moving in to help manage things, Laura was skeptical. Dad, you don't need managing, she said. You're 62 years old. You restored a Camaro last summer. You hike. You're fine. I told her she worried too much. I should have listened to her instead. The first year Marcus and Renee lived with me felt mostly normal. They took the 2 upstairs bedrooms, paid a token amount in rent that Marcus called contributing to household expenses, and Renee cooked dinner 3 or 4 times a week, which, I'll admit, I appreciated. The house felt less empty. After 6 years of grief, that mattered to me. The changes were gradual. That's how these things work, I've come to understand. They don't arrive all at once. They seep in slowly, like water finding cracks in old concrete. Marcus started coming with me to doctor appointments, just to help keep track of things, he said. I had a hip replacement scheduled for the following spring, and he said 2 sets of ears were better than 1. Seemed reasonable. I let him come. Then he started sitting in on the actual appointments, taking notes, asking my doctor questions I hadn't asked. My doctor, a young guy named Hendricks, who I'd only been seeing 2 years, didn't seem to mind. I noticed Marcus and Dr. Hendricks shaking hands in the parking lot once, chatting like old friends. I told myself it was nothing. Renee started handling my mail. Just organizing it, she said, because the kitchen counter was getting cluttered. She'd sort it into piles: bills, personal, junk, and leave the piles on my desk. Except the piles on my desk started getting thinner. I'd ask about a statement I was expecting, and she'd say she'd put it somewhere safe, she'd find it later, not to worry. I should have worried. About 18 months in, Marcus sat me down at the kitchen table after dinner and said he thought it would be easier if he helped manage my finances directly. He had a business background, he said. He knew how to optimize accounts, reduce tax liability, make the money work harder for retirement. He slid a folder across the table. Power of attorney documents. Just a precaution, he said. Most people his age set something like this up for their parents. Laura had been too busy to help, hadn't she? He was here. He was trying to help. I signed them. Looking back, that was the moment everything changed. I just didn't know it yet. Gerald Fitch turned out to be a nervous man in his late 50s who met me and Laura at a Panera Bread in Columbus because he refused to meet anywhere closer to Dayton. He kept checking the door. He had a folder with him, thick with paper. I want you to understand, he said, that I thought this was legitimate. He had power of attorney. He had documentation. Everything looked proper. What did he do? Laura asked. She had her legal pad open, pen in hand, already working. Gerald slid the folder across the table. Over the previous 2.5 years, Marcus had moved $218,000 out of my retirement accounts in incremental transfers Never more than $15,000 at a time to avoid triggering bank alerts. He'd redirected my pension checks to a joint account I didn't know existed. He'd taken out a home equity line of credit against my house. The one Carol and I bought in 1991 and paid off in 2019 for $180,000. He'd drawn down $140,000 of it. The LLC he was trying to fund by Friday was a real estate holding company registered in Nevada. His name wasn't on it anywhere. Renee's sister's name was on it. Total so far, just under $360,000. And he'd been planning to move another $340,000 by the end of the week. I sat in that Panera Bread and looked at the numbers and felt something go very quiet inside me. He has power of attorney, I said. He does, Gerald said. But power of attorney doesn't authorize self-dealing. It doesn't authorize him to transfer your assets to entities he controls or benefits from. That's not management, that's theft. Laura's hand was on my arm. She hadn't said a word in 2 minutes, which for her meant she was either devastated or furious. I knew my daughter. She was both. What about the home equity line? I asked. He needed my signature for that. Gerald opened the folder to a specific page and turned it toward me. I looked at the signature on the home equity documents. It wasn't my signature. It looked like my signature. If I'd been handed those papers quickly, in a stack, after a long day, I might have missed it. But sitting here, knowing what to look for, I could see the differences. The way the R curved, the way I crossed my L's, which I don't actually cross, a habit from childhood that Carol used to tease me about. Someone had practiced my signature. Someone had gotten it almost right, but not quite. That's document fraud, Laura said quietly. Yes, Gerald said. That's why I called. We drove back to Dayton in Laura's car. She insisted on driving. I sat in the passenger seat and watched the highway unspool in the dark and tried to fit what I knew into the shape of the son I thought I had. Marcus, at 7 years old, losing his first tooth and howling about it until Carol gave him ice cream for dinner. Marcus, at 15, sitting with me in the garage the first time I let him help with an engine rebuild, his face so focused and careful, wanting to do it right. Marcus, at 32, standing at Carol's grave in the rain, his arm around me, not saying anything because there was nothing to say. Dad. Laura's voice pulled me back. I'm here. I need you to understand what happens next. We're going to do this carefully. We can't tip him off. The moment he knows we know, he could move the money somewhere we can't follow it, or destroy documents. Or she stopped. We need to do this right. I know. You can't say anything to him. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. You go home and you act normal. I understand. I'm calling a forensic accountant in the morning and a criminal attorney. This isn't just a civil matter, Dad. What he did with the signature, that's forgery. The financial transfers could be wire fraud. This is federal territory. I nodded. And, Dad? She glanced over. I'm sorry I didn't push harder. 3 years ago when he moved in, I knew something felt wrong. I should have... You were right, I said. You told me. I didn't listen. She was quiet for a moment. I should have tried harder to make you listen. Acting normal turned out to be one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I've had my share of hard things. Every morning Marcus came downstairs, poured himself coffee, and asked how I'd slept with exactly the same ease and warmth he'd always had. Every evening Renee made dinner, and we sat at the table I had sat at for 30 years, and talked about nothing, the neighbor's new dog, a story on the news, whether the Reds had any shot this season. I watched them differently now. I watched the way Marcus occasionally checked his phone and angled the screen away. I watched the way Renee lingered near my desk when she thought I wasn't looking. I noticed that my filing cabinet, which I'd kept locked since Carol's passing, had small scratches near the keyhole that hadn't been there before. I kept working on the Mustang. It was the only place I felt like myself. Alone in the garage with the radio on low, the familiar smell of oil and old metal, my hands doing work they knew how to do. I thought about what Gerald had said about the transfers, incremental and patient, month after month, year after year. I thought about how much planning that took, how much pretending. Laura called every evening at 9, brief check-ins that sounded like a daughter catching up with her father, and were actually strategy updates. The forensic accountant was building a full picture. The criminal attorney, a woman named Patricia Shea, who Laura described as relentless, had reviewed Gerald's documentation and agreed this met the threshold for federal wire fraud charges. She wants to bring in the FBI's financial crimes unit, Laura told me on the 8th night. All right. They'll want to interview Gerald. And eventually you. I know, Dad. This is gonna get very hard. Laura. I set down the rag I'd been using to clean my hands. I spent 31 years teaching teenagers about people who did hard things when it mattered. I'm not gonna fall apart now. She didn't say anything for a second. Okay, she said softly. Okay, Dad. The FBI came on a Thursday. I'd been told to be away from the house between 9 and noon. I drove to a diner 40 minutes outside Dayton and ate a full breakfast I didn't taste and drank 3 cups of coffee and read a newspaper without retaining a single word. At 11:40, Patricia Shea called me. It's done. They executed the search warrant and froze the accounts. Marcus and Renee are at the field office in Columbus now for questioning. What about the Nevada LLC? Frozen. The transfers hadn't cleared yet. We caught it in time. I put the phone down on the table and looked out the diner window at the parking lot. An old couple was walking in together, moving slowly. The man's hand at the woman's back in that particular way, that means 30 or 40 years of knowing someone's pace. I had to look away. When I got home, the house felt different. Quieter in a way that wasn't peaceful. I walked through each room slowly. Upstairs, their bedroom doors were open, clothes still in the closet. Ordinary life interrupted mid-sentence. In the kitchen, a coffee mug Marcus had been using that morning was still on the counter, half full. I went to the garage, lifted the Mustang's hood, and got back to work. Marcus called from the Columbus field office that afternoon. He was allowed one call before his attorney arrived. He called me, Dad. His voice was different. The ease was gone. What was underneath it was something younger and more frightened. Dad, I need you to hear my side of this. I didn't say anything. The money, I was protecting it. I was investing it. The market has been volatile, and I was moving it somewhere safer. I was always going to tell you, I just needed to get everything in order first. Marcus. My voice came out steadier than I expected. The signature on the home equity documents isn't mine. Silence. I need you to tell me, I said. Did you forge my signature, or did Renee? More silence. Then, Dad, please don't do this. Which one of you? Nothing. I'm not dropping any charges, I said. I want you to know that before you say anything else. I'm not doing this because I hate you. I'm doing it because what you did was wrong, and I won't pretend otherwise. Whatever your attorney tells you to do next, that's between you and him. But I need you to know that I know what you did, and I know you've known exactly what you were doing for 3 years. I heard him breathing. I loved you, I said. I trusted you with everything. Your mother isn't alive to see this. I'm grateful for that every single day. I hung up. I put the phone face down on the workbench, picked up a wrench, and kept working. The next weeks moved like a slow current I had no control over. Patricia walked me through each development in careful, precise terms. Marcus had been charged with wire fraud and forgery. Renee had been charged as a co-conspirator. The Nevada LLC had been dissolved by court order and the assets frozen pending recovery. Gerald Fitch, who had cooperated fully, was not being charged. Laura came to Dayton on a Friday evening, and we sat on the back porch with iced tea, and she went through everything with me the way she would with a client, organized and thorough, answering every question before I asked it. The civil case is separate from the criminal, she said. Patricia's handling the criminal side. I've got a civil litigation attorney ready to file for recovery of assets. Between the frozen transfers and the home equity line, we're looking at recovering most of it. Maybe all. And the house? The HELOC is frozen. No more draws. Once we get judgment, we can move to discharge it. You'll own it free and clear again. I looked out at the yard. Carol had planted a rose garden along the back fence in 2003, and I'd kept it alive ever since. Badly the first 2 years. Better after I learned what I was doing. The roses were blooming now, red and yellow, and one stubborn white climber that always bloomed a week after everything else. Did you know, I asked, that Renee was involved? Laura turned her glass in her hands. I suspected her early on, the mail situation. The way she managed the household information. That's not innocent helpfulness, Dad. That's control. She seemed to care about me. I know. That's what made it effective. She looked at me. People like that aren't monsters. That's the hardest part to explain to people. They're ordinary people who decided that what they wanted mattered more than what was right. They told themselves a story about why it was okay, and they kept telling it until they believed it. I thought about Marcus's voice on the phone from the field office. That younger, frightened thing underneath the charm. He was always scared of not having enough, I said. Even as a kid, when Carol and I went through that rough patch financially in '98, he was 11 years old, and he started hoarding his allowance. Wouldn't spend a cent. Carol thought it was cute. I paused. It wasn't cute. It was a wound that never healed right. That's not your fault. No, but it explains some things. Marcus came to the house 6 weeks after the arrest. He'd been released on bail with conditions. His attorney had obviously advised him to come, but I could see in the way he moved slower, older looking, the confidence drained out of his posture that he wasn't entirely performing. I didn't invite him in. We stood on the porch. He looked at the rose garden and looked at the garage, where the Mustang's nose was visible through the open door, and looked at everything except me. I'm not here to ask you to drop the charges, he said. Good. I know you won't. He rubbed his face. Patricia made that very clear. Through our attorneys. Then what are you here for? He finally looked at me. His eyes were red at the rims, not crying, just wrecked in the way of someone who hasn't slept in 6 weeks. I don't know. I think I needed to see if you were okay. I'm fine, Dad. I'm fine, Marcus. I'm sleeping. I'm eating. I went hiking last weekend. I'm working on the Mustang. I looked at him steadily. I am fine. What you did didn't break me. I need you to know that. He flinched. It was harsher than if I'd yelled at him. Was any of it real? I asked. The question had been sitting in me for 6 weeks. When you moved back, when you sat with me after your mother's funeral, when we rebuilt the engine on the Bronco together that first winter, was any of it real? His jaw tightened. Yes. And somewhere in the middle of it, you decided that what was real didn't matter as much as the money. He didn't answer. Get a lawyer who will tell you to take whatever deal they offer, I said. Don't put me through a trial if you can help it. That's the one thing I'm asking you for. He nodded. And Marcus. I waited until he looked at me again. Get help. Real help. Not a therapist your attorney recommended for optics. Real help for whatever it is that made you think this was survivable. Because you're 38 years old and you've got a long time left to live with this. He walked back to his car. He didn't look back. I watched him drive away, then went inside and called Laura. He came, I said. I know. His attorney called mine. How are you? I've been better. I've also been worse. I sat in the kitchen chair I'd sat in for 30 years, the one with the slightly uneven leg that I'd always meant to fix and never did. He asked if I was okay. What did you say? That I was fine. I looked at Carol's roses through the window, and I think I actually meant it. The criminal case resolved faster than Patricia expected. The forgery charge, combined with the wire fraud documentation, left Marcus's attorney very little room to negotiate. Marcus took a plea. 30 months federal prison, 5 years supervised release, full restitution. Renee took a separate plea. 18 months, 3 years, supervised release, full participation in the restitution order. I sat in Patricia's office when she told me the terms. I had a cup of coffee going cold in my hand. That's it? I said. For the criminal side, yes. The civil judgment is separate. You'll get that in about 8 weeks. Based on current asset freezes, we're projecting full recovery of the transferred funds. 30 months, I said. He'll be out before he's 42. Yes. Does that feel like justice to you? Patricia was quiet for a moment. She was a careful woman, not given to unnecessary words. It feels like consequence, she said. Whether that's the same as justice depends on what you were hoping for. I thought about that all the way home. What had I been hoping for? Not prison, not punishment exactly. I think I'd been hoping, somewhere under everything, that there would be a moment where it made sense. Where I'd understand how the boy I raised became the man who stole from me and practiced my signature in secret and sat across from me at dinner for 3 years without blinking. That moment never came. I don't think it was going to. The civil judgment came through on a Tuesday in October. Full recovery, the HELOC discharged, the retirement accounts restored, court costs awarded to my side. I called Laura. She cried, which she almost never does, and she tried to cover it by saying she had something in her throat, which neither of us believed. Congratulations, Dad. Thank you for making this happen. You made it happen. I just did the paperwork. After we hung up, I sat in the garage for a long time. The Mustang was nearly done. I'd been working on it all year, through everything, and it was almost right. New upholstery ordered. Carburetor solved. A rebuilt engine that ran cleaner than it had in 40 years. I thought about what Marcus had done and what it had cost both of us. The money was coming back. The time wasn't. The 3 years I'd spent thinking I was loved when I was being managed, thinking I was helped when I was being robbed, those years were just gone, and no court order gave them back. But here's what I'd learned. Sitting in that garage with the smell of oil and old metal and the radio on low, being betrayed by someone you love doesn't mean you were foolish to love them. It means they made a choice to abuse what you gave them freely. That's on them, not on me. I spent 31 years teaching teenagers to think clearly about history, to resist the urge to blame victims for the actions of people who hurt them. It turned out I needed to apply that lesson to myself. About 2 months after the judgment, a card arrived in the mail. Plain white envelope, Marcus's handwriting, a Columbus postmark from the Federal Processing Facility. I opened it at the kitchen table. It was a single index card. His handwriting, neat the way it always was, I taught him that. Made him redo his homework until his letters were legible, another thing Carol had teased me about. Dad, I don't expect anything from you. I just need you to know that I understand what I did, not the charges. What I did to you, I'm going to spend a long time trying to understand how I got there. I hope you're working on the car. I put the card on the kitchen table and looked at it for a while. Then I put it in the drawer where I keep Carol's letters. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something. A small evidence that the boy I'd raised was still in there somewhere, trying to find his way back to something true. The Mustang was finished on a Thursday morning in November. I took it out on Route 40 just as the sun was coming up, drove east into the flat Ohio light with the windows down and the heater on and the engine running perfectly smooth, every part doing exactly what it was supposed to do. I'd found a crack in the engine block during the rebuild, so small I almost missed it. I'd almost kept going, told myself it would hold. Probably wouldn't matter. But I'd stopped. I'd fixed it right. That's the thing about doing restoration work. You can't skip the step where you find what's broken. You can't pretend the damage isn't there and expect the thing to run true. You have to stop, find the crack, fix it properly, or everything you build on top of it is built on a lie. I drove until the sun was fully up, and then I turned around and drove home. Laura was flying in for Thanksgiving. She'd mentioned, carefully, that she was going to bring someone she'd been seeing for 8 months, a civil engineer from Providence named Thomas, who apparently liked hiking, which I took as a good sign. I was planning to make Carol's stuffing recipe, which I'd finally gotten right on the 4th try, 2 years ago. I had a 1971 Chevelle waiting in the garage. Someone had done a bad restoration on it in the 90s, and I was going to have to undo their work before I could do mine, which was always the harder job, fixing someone else's mistakes while trying not to break what they'd gotten right. I was looking forward to it. That's the thing about being 64 and still here, still moving, still capable of putting something broken back together with your own hands. Every morning you get up and go to the garage is a morning they didn't take from you. Marcus will be in a federal facility for the next 30 months. Renee will be doing community service and reporting to a probation officer. And I'll be in my garage in Dayton, Ohio with the radio on and my hands covered in grease, working on something worth fixing. There's a kind of justice in that. Not the loud, triumphant kind, the quiet kind. The kind that looks like just another morning, which is the only kind that lasts. My clocks tick. My engine runs. I keep going. If you found this story worth your time, please like this video and subscribe to Honest Revenge Stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. And if you know someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to fight back, send this to them. The next story is waiting for you on the left.